We're going to give it another 30 seconds to a minute to let people get into the webinar, and then we'll get started. So welcome to the Every Learner Everywhere Educational Equity Through Digital Learning Virtual Summer Workshop. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. My name is Norma Hollebeck, and I'm the manager for network programs and services with Every Learner Everywhere, and I will be moderating your session today. We're going to go through a few quick housekeeping notes. We are recording today's session, which we will share with you after the webinar. It'll be posted in the LMS by tomorrow morning. Throughout the presentation, we welcome your questions in the Q&A section. We will be monitoring both the Q&A and the chat during the presentation. And later, as we get near the end of the presentation and later on in the event, during that question and answer time, we will unmute participants with questions if you raise your hand, so that we have some really good interactivity with our guest speaker. So I'm gonna try to switch slides here and hand it over to our guest speaker.
Hello, my name is Dr. Priya.
I'll give you an introduction. Is the slide, are your slides ready to go? Or
yeah, just a minute. Yeah, I will share them.
So while she's getting the slides up, as a biology professor and recovering associate dean, I am excited about today's presentation, development and implementation of adaptive, interactive, and active physics courses. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Priya Jamkhedkar, instructor and adjunct research associate in the Department of Physics at Portland State University. Priya completed her PhD in astrophysics at the University of Arizona and has now joined Portland State University, where she teaches introductory physics to engineers and pre-health science majors. She has also developed 3 active and adaptive courses for introductory physics using Cogbooks. Priya is also interested in educational research, especially for large introductory physics courses. She's committed to promoting equity in education, helping students develop science literacy and critical thinking and social responsibility through classroom projects, activities, and teaching tools. I will now hand it over to Priya.
Thank you, Norma. So this is my first webinar, and I'm getting used to this whole setup. But today I'm going to talk to you about the development of active and adaptive courses at Portland State University using Cogbooks. And so I'm going to talk about my experience there, developing these courses, and what kind of feedback we have gotten from students while we were developing these courses. So my course is my talk is going to be basically a little bit focused on our physics courses. So you might see some jargon which could be physics related, but you can stop me or ask questions regarding that. I've tried to keep the talk as basic as possible, but yeah, there is a lot of physics jargon, a little physics jargon, because my courses are physics courses. So I want to start with why did we need a personalized, interactive, and adaptive platform? So Portland State University is a public university, and we have really large class sizes. So we have anywhere from 100 to 200 students per class in our introductory classes. And we have a wide range of students taking these classes, so that as an instructor, we are dealing with different student behaviors concerned with learning, different learning paces, different skill sets they are coming with, and also different learning preferences. Some students are better visual learners and would rather watch a video or look at a simulation. Some people get more by reading text. Some people like hands-on activities. And most of us just like a whole a collection of all these different ways of learning the same concept, right? So this is a challenge for an instructor teaching a single class with all of these students in this classroom setting where we really cannot truly cater to any one student group, okay? So the skills the range of skills that our students were coming with, they is kind of listed in this slide. And basically the skills that were important for a physics class were math skills. So we had students who would come in without the basic foundational skills, or they just got rusty. So we also had students taking this class as juniors or seniors or post-bacs, and they probably forgot their math skills, or they just didn't understand a concept. So they would come with a bit unprepared with their math skills. So that was a challenge for us when we would teach our physics classes and really jump into some of that math. Then with the large range of skills, we also had this whole challenge with conceptual understanding. So we had these wide concepts that we are teaching. And so how are these concepts really connected with real world examples? How are they connected with the math? How are they connected with the problems? And basically, how do we reinforce a very strong understanding of concepts while we are trying to also achieve all these different things in our class? So problem solving skill was another thing which we struggle with. Is a lot of students did not struggle with interpreting word problems, right? And they struggle with understanding what concept there is. They also lack the process involved in solving a problem, meaning a lot of them literally lack organizational skills of understanding what's been provided to them, making a list of knowns, unknowns, drawing a sketch, drawing a diagram, understanding what's required, and then understanding, hey, what concept do I need to use, or what physics principle, and then understanding what are the correct math skills required to solve this problem. And once they have an answer, does that answer make sense? Are they following that step to check if their answer is correct, if their answer is reasonable, and so on? So in that large classroom setting, we had to kind of develop and nurture that skill, which also has been a challenge for us. And lastly, using scientific language, so correct scientific language. So while we were focused on the concepts or how to use the concept with the correct math, are students using the correct scientific language to express concepts? Are they kind of, so the language also needs to be tied in during their teaching to just integrate everything and to create deeper understanding and eventually promote critical thinking. So this is a challenge that I'm sure many of you face when you are dealing with introductory course students taking these introductory courses at your university. So basically what we wanted to do when we wanted to develop these new courses, And we were actually lucky that our university was selected to get the grant through APLU and I guess Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for active and adaptive courses. And so we got this opportunity to create a course from scratch, because we looked at different physics courses that were out there and they didn't have all the features that we wanted in our courses to promote all these things that I just talked about. So our main thing was, so this slide kind of just tells what were our main goals when we were trying to create the courses here at PSU. So the main thing was to reduce cost to students. So in the past, I've used different software to accomplish different things, like for pre-lecture software and a homework software and clickers for polling. And while all of these really improved my teaching and I thought they were valuable, because everything was separate, it added to the cost to the students on top of their textbook. So students were not particularly happy. And if there were technical issues or if they got frustrated, this was this major frustration point as to why are they using all these softwares which are costly and don't seem to have any effect on us. So we wanted to create something that had homework, pre-lecture material, interactive simulations, all these support in one place, in one software. And we also wanted to reduce cost to students for this software. So when we were trying to build this software, we used OER textbooks and OER material, like the free videos, free good quality videos, good quality simulations, and the textbook. So the textbook we ended up using was from OpenStax, which I think is a really good textbook. And so we used that textbook and built on it. And we used it as a base material for building our Cogbooks course. So on this platform, we also included math remediation. So I created some math review tutorials for the math skills required for my particular courses. So students have it in one place. Then we also kind of incorporated different learning styles to give people a choice, meaning the design of our course was such that every chapter, I kind of put a short summary, like pretty much I started with my slides in class and kind of made them more detailed. But if students wanted to know more about the concept, they were given the option of watching a video on the same concept or the entire page from the textbook. Or if they feel confident, they can just move on. And then we had more activities like small questions that either checked concepts or like just a simple calculation. So we kind of let students have that choice of looking at this material in different formats. And if they kind of felt confident, then just move on. But if they wanted more help, then look at this extra material that we've provided to you. So basically, as they go through that chapter, there are these small questions, which we named knowledge check questions. And then we also embedded them with interactive activities such as simulations. So simulations, we embedded them from, again, OER resources like PhET simulations. There are a lot of simulations available free to use online. And using the grant, we created our own simulations too. So there were 2 or 3 ways we were generating simulations. But adding the simulations actually, which I'll talk in detail in another slide, really helped improve the quality, interactivity, and self-exploration. So students could just change things, look at the response of the system or the behavior of the system. And visualize three-dimensional concepts or concepts that are evolving in time, which we really couldn't achieve on a whiteboard or blackboard or just the 2D way of teaching. We could achieve those things. So that kind of led to more engagement, more student engagement in class, and students would ask deeper questions. And when I taught, I would kind of sometimes discover something for the first time and say, hey, this is because, you can see why the simulation is behaving like that. So I could point out to some things that, in my traditional setting would just get lost because we did not have that perspective for those chapters. So that was one feature. And then homework. So the homework so we have large classes. And so I think the truly ideal way of dealing with physics questions or math question is for students to do homework and do all the things by themselves. But because we had a large class, we don't have graders, we can't really grade their homework every week. We do need a software. We need it a little bit automated. And so we had traditionally used online software. But with online homework software that was available like a few years ago, all the students would do is enter the final numerical answer in the box. And because we used that kind of thing, we were losing certain skills that were important when they were writing it down on paper, like organization, drawing a diagram, by really talking about the concepts or strategies, by showing all the math steps. And also making sense of the final answer. So all these things were missing. And in fact, we started losing those skills. And when we saw those we saw problems on the exams, they were, for many students, they were disorganized, they were all over the place. It wasn't clear to us if they really understood anything or if they were actually integrating concepts. And solving the problems kind of expert-like. So in this homework feature in our courses, we've tried to scaffold homework with intermediate steps. So we've broken down homework by making them work through intermediate steps. Some homeworks needed us to plot graphs. And so we have tried using GeoGebra for them to actually make some graphs, which can be assessed. So the graphs could be graded for right and wrong. So, and in physics, we have these force diagrams or vector diagrams where they had to draw the forces with their directions and magnitudes on objects to analyze them. So that is something we wanted to have in our homework platform so that students would know that, hey, this is an essential step when you're using a physics problem. And so we wanted to have that in our homework. We also wanted something with a software that would accept non-numeric answers, if that is answers left in variable forms. We also wanted a system where we wanted the homework to give different values to different students. So we would have the same homework questions, but different students would get different values. So they weren't necessarily copying each other's answers, right? And then sense-making prompts, we also wanted them to, after you've solved your homework, are you kind of thinking about the answer, thinking, is this reasonable or it's not? Are you doing some kind of check? So that, and then we also wanted to provide well-written solutions for each homework questions. And we wanted to make that as a learning tool for students who kind of did the homework somehow, but now they're looking at the well-written solution and looking at it step by step. So we wanted all of those features in our new course. And with all these features in place, Then that added the personalized component wherein students could work at their own pace, their own skill level. We also had provided support items like us solving some sample questions, support in terms of those textbook pages, content pages. And so a little bit of support that way. So these were the goals. So with these goals, and this was a evolving dynamic process, we learned a lot on the way, and we created 3 courses in 3 years, last 3 years. We created an algebra-based general physics course for non-majors. Mostly these people were pre-health students who just needed this course as their core requirement or degree requirement for their professional careers or clinical careers. Then we also developed, the year after that, we developed a calculus-based general physics course, which is for our engineering majors and which uses calculus to teach physics concepts. And then the third course, which is a new course, which we added another dimension to our interactivity and adaptivity, that is relevance. And so this was a course created with this focus on our pre-health population, who are basically pre-meds, physical therapy students, dentists, pre-dental students, or biology majors. And they are made to take these courses, and usually they take the algebra-based general physics course. But a lot of them do not understand why they require that physics, the way we teach it traditionally. They don't see the connection with medicine or biomedical examples. So in this course, we changed the curriculum to teach physics concepts through biomedical examples. We also made expert videos from doctors, cardiologists, orthodontists, physical therapists, just research scientists, biological research scientists working in the lab. So students saw that focus through the examples, through simulations, and also through experts in their field pointing to this connection, telling them physics is important to what you do. And so this is the course this past year, COVID and all, we kind of implemented it with all the challenges of remote learning. And we did a full implementation of that. So those are the 3 courses we developed at PSU. So I think the rest of the talk, I'm just going to show you the actual features, like just show you some diagrams of the actual things that were in the course. So this is an example of a homework question that had graphs, right? So here, this is interactive. So here are these arrows on the left. This is like a vector, like a graph using vectors, right? And the students are given a word problem, and they have to figure out the direction and the magnitude of the different arrows, drag them up in the proper places, and find the resultant vector. And so these are basically vector diagrams that can be graded for accuracy. So these diagrams can be put in an assessment, and students could actually, we could grade them, and which was not possible with the older software, but we could do it now. On the right, there's another simulation. This is a block going up an incline. So there are different forces acting on the block, such as its weight, there's friction, there's this reaction from the surface. And so students usually in a typical class have to figure out the direction. They have to kind of figure out what the magnitude of these forces is. And this is a very hard and challenging problem for students. So in this simulation, they can actually vary. They have, they can push the block up the incline, they can push it down the incline, the block could be stationary. And in all of those scenarios, they can see the direction of the forces. They can see how much of a different force, how much of a force acts in a particular direction, and so on. So this visual just helps them understand how the forces are working, what's contributing to the motion, how is the motion affected when the magnitudes of certain forces change. This slide is showing you simulations. So on the left, there is a PhET simulation. And so PhET are really common simulations developed by Colorado, University of Colorado. And so they are real popular in physics. And so we could embed it in my software. And I actually created some small activities for students to explore this out of class at their own time and really highlight one particular concept. So here they are given instructions to build a circuit, and they are asked to make observations. And so so this could be done at their own pace. And in fact, they could explore more. Okay. The simulation on the right is basically a simulation when I teach sound waves, right? So it's telling you what happens when two waves are going to mix or interfere when you're standing, when an observer is standing. So the students can change the frequency of those waves, and they can change the alignment of the two waves as they reach you. And they can look at what the resultant wave, or when you add the waves, how does it add? And in this simulation, you can also hear it. So if you play it, you can actually hear the final sound. So they can change a few parameters and they can see the change in the sound. In fact, there is a phenomenon known as beats in physics, where the sound intensity is going to fluctuate with time. So you're going to hear like a little, like the sound reverberating even a bit. So when we taught this in traditionally, and I wrote all these equations on the blackboard, and I told them this is what's going to happen, it really doesn't make an impact unless you hear it, I need to do a demonstration and show them how the intensity is changing over time. So this kind of gives me a way to put these kind of simulations where they had to hear something. And they can do this at home. They don't need to be in class, so I don't need to do a live demonstration for it. And they can play with the different parameters. All right, the scaffolded homework. So here, the first homework question, so the first two lines are pretty much the lines that are behind the textbook. So this problem has been taken from OpenStax, and those first two sentences are the question that appeared in OpenStax. So what I did was we went into the homework and we kind of broke it down in different parts. So like here, the first part is just asking them to create a list of knowns and unknowns, or whatever was given in that question. Are you identifying those numbers to the variables we've used in our equations? So they do a setup. Then the second is like they do some kind of reasoning. Hey, what kind of motion is this? Is it this? Is the acceleration constant? Is it changing? Is the velocity going to change? What is it, right? And so when they go through that reasoning, then with that reasoning, I'm giving them different set of formulae. So which one do you think you should use if you're asked to calculate such and such thing? And this particular slide doesn't show, but in a lot of other homeworks, I've put prompts saying that, hey, think, is this velocity, is this kind of reasonable? Is the magnitude reasonable? Or some prompt that makes them think about the validity of their answer. Are they doing some kind of check for the answer? Okay, so we tried to do the scaffolding. Now I need to tell you that this has been a work in progress, because the more I use with students and I see, hey, they're still struggling with such and such a thing. So then I kind of put that support. So this is again an evolving kind of thing with each question. If they needed more support for each question, I put hints in those questions. But something that they're not automatically taking a formula sheet, doing a plug and chug, but they're actually going through the process, actually thinking about the concepts and principles used, and basically some kind of organizational support is being given to them. Then we also put this feature called interactive glossary, where this is just like a regular glossary from a textbook, but we kind of made it like a game where they drag and drop the definitions to the concept. And so it's just something fun, but it kind of also helps them to define concepts precisely in mathematical format. And the more they see concepts being expressed like that in a compact, succinct way, I think it just gives them more practice. Hey, I don't need a lot of extra stuff to define a concept. I also don't need too little that I leave some exceptions or I leave some information out. I do need to have enough information in the concept so that I can explain it to someone who's never heard this concept at all without being very ambiguous. So just some little thing where they are also practicing this in addition to other things. Now this slide shows our biomedical relevant content videos. So these are for that third course that I implemented this year. And the first two slides on the top, we interviewed a physical therapist, and on the right, Faye Horak is an expert in balance disorders lab. She works in Oregon Health Sciences Institute. And so they are talking about their particular field and how physics concepts could be used. So here, life on the left, Dr. Bridges talks about life as a physical therapist. What are some physical concepts that he uses that are very relevant in physical therapy? Dr. Horak talks about the concept of center of mass and balance and the physics of it. She also talks about what are the mechanisms inside the human body to detect balance, and what are some neurological disorders that affect balance in patients like Parkinson's and so on, and how their lab studies these disorders, measuring forces, measuring balances, so measuring physics concepts. So she kind of integrates all of those medicine, biology things, measurement things, research things in that video. So that gives the students this integrated perspective. Now the video in the bottom left, we went to a humans performance lab where humans or patients are or sports people who come for sports performance. They are asked to do certain tasks like walking, running, jumping, and all of those measurements are done using force plates or coordinates and analyzed, and how you can get information out by analyzing these physics concepts to talk about sport injuries or to come up with plans to improve performance in sports patients, sports in athletes. So they see that connection. And then right bottom, we created the simulation showing torques and equilibrium in the elbow joint. So as you hold some kind of load or a weight on your elbow joint, how is in this particular simulation, students are learning how the bicep muscle gets engaged, what kind of torques and forces does it need to have, and at different orientation, what are these values? And so they learn a lot about the concept of torque, which is a purely physics concept, which was traditionally taught without this relevance in a traditional way. So the students maybe in the traditional course did not see that connection, but here they can completely see the connection as to, hey, the bicep muscle, what kind of torque can it generate? How are forces generated inside the human body? So all of that is interactive, relevant, but when I use Cogbooks, I was able to put everything in just one place. And so that has helped me a lot, that students didn't have to go in 5 or 6 different places or software to look for this information. So they kind of felt very supported with having all of this design in there. So observations, in fact, I talked about many of these observations as I was showing you the slides. Basically, this has helped students to have a way to learn the concepts in a very active learning environment, active and interactive and supportive. Because in every step of the way, we have supported student learning, either through design in the main path or by providing them actual support activities through the adaptive nature of the platform. So all of this comes together quite nicely. And so in physics itself, it has helped my students to visualize spatial phenomena with vectors, with rotations, with free body diagrams. So that has led to I think, to a deeper understanding, and they enjoy it more, and they don't feel that frustrated when they don't have to kind of imagine that rotation just in their head while I'm talking about it in class. They can actually see all of that happening. Then just helping with the problems, like I'm setting the expectation, hey, problem solving, the last numerical answer is not the only important thing when you're solving problems. The process is important. So I am highlighting the importance of all the intermediate steps, helping them create that way of organizing, of thinking, organizing their solution, checking their solution. So, I mean, even if they don't remember any of the physics content when they kind of move on to do other things, I'm hoping that this critical thinking and this organization and this carefulness and attentiveness can be built in these students. Okay. And so students have had a positive experience using this overall. So I'm going to show you one survey result, and this was in our first year of using these courses. And so we have overall positive results and this is our very first implementation. So we've made more improvements to the courses after this. But even with that first implementation, students felt supported that Cogbooks helped them prepare for the class. Cogbooks helped me be prepared for the quizzes. Feedback on Cogbooks helped me stay on track. Cogbooks help me identify with what I'm struggling with. And most importantly, Cogbooks increase my confidence in my own learning. So all of these had more positive than negative, and things have improved given that this was just the first implementation of the course. And as we learn what glitches there are or what things are still missing, we keep refining them. But I think this was encouraging for us to see in that first year that even with all of our first year implementation challenges we did get a positive result. Conclusion, I personally had more positive experience teaching these courses with all these features in one place. So I enjoy teaching, just knowing that I have this tool. And so that kind of sometimes gives me some more flexibility to focus on things I want to focus on, or the things I know that they are struggling with. So support, so it's not all dependent on me in my traditional setting that I have to cover everything in my 2-hour lecture, and which obviously I can do, and also work on these skills. It gives me more flexibility. It gives me a way to put more support and resources and work that they can do out of class. Um, and so I like it. Students have also expressed overall positive feedbacks when using these courses, so which is encouraging to me. Again, work in progress. We are fine tuning everything. So future, keep polishing. And also we are conducting more assessments to actually study the effectiveness of these courses and different features that we've implemented. So that's going to be my job this coming year. I'm actually designing assessments. I'm looking at physics education research to see how best to design um, statistical quantities and analyze my work so that we get meaningful data from what we are doing. So with this, my talk is done. And so I will open the talk for questions. And I don't know if I should stop sharing my screen. So
yeah,
Norma,
you can go ahead and stop sharing, and
okay.
We're gonna try this out. Last time we didn't, but if our participants would like to raise their hand, I will unmute you so that you can ask Priya your questions. So I'm gonna try to balance this out. In the meantime, I'm gonna ask you a question. With this, it's kind of looks like, and it sounds like what you did was flipped your classroom, where you're having the students do a lot of front end work on their own, and then they can come into class and do more meaningful work. In that scenario, how do you know that it's actually the adaptive courseware and personalized learning that's helping the students improve, rather than just the fact that you flipped your classroom?
I don't because what I did the first few years, I think couple years, I had done my activities as pre-lecture where they work on Cogbooks and they come and I do a mini lecture. And in the class itself, I had group problem solving. So I would give them worksheets and we would solve stuff. So we did that. We had them actually look at the material. So that kind of helped me that they already came a little bit prepared, or at least familiar. Now, I couldn't tell how much people got. Some of them got a lot from the pre-lecture for some concepts, and some of them probably didn't bother. They just kind of did the minimum, came to class, probably just clicked the pages. I don't know. But so we did a lot of these activities, and we also had outside support. Like I would give them, I had incentivized them to use the actual tutoring we offered in our learning center. We also have peer-led workshops. So it's that. We had them this resource. So I think the answer to your question is different students use different features in different ways. And right now, I can't tell who used what. And that's going to be actually our when we are assessing these courses, how are students actually using all of these resources? So what I have noticed is that students, so when I made these pre-lecture activities compulsory and students had to do them, I actually had, when they came to class, they were more engaged. They asked deeper questions. They felt more enthusiastic about learning. Now, not all of them, because some of them were still doing their, what's the minimum I can do here? So we actually did some statistic that how many are actually using the support adaptive part or the support material in my courses, and about 40% is what we saw. So I can't pinpoint, is that scaffolded homework helping? Are the simulations helping? Is that math remediation helping? Is this adaptive support helping? Are these outside the class support helping? Don't know. So I don't know.
So that's your next step, is to figure that out, what it is that's helping. Okay.
Yeah. My feeling is everything is helping.
Okay. We do have a question from, I'm going to unmute you, Christine, so you can ask your question to Priya.
I teach public speaking and communication studies courses, and I've stumbled into the use of the force concept inventory in some physics courses. Have you used that inventory? I always thought that the physics educators had a real neat thing going with that. And was just wondering if you'd ever used that in your experience and had any benefits or seen that be helpful.
Yes, so the physics concept inventory is a test that checks conceptual understanding of physics concepts.
I know what it is.
Yeah, so so I used FCME last year, but this is the year when I'm going to kind of use those tests and do all those assessments to see what the impact on learning is.
Okay, yeah, because I think it's a real neat thing, and I was going to try to make one for public speaking inventory because it's based on the misunderstandings that the students have based on their naive conceptual understanding of the concept, and some of them don't understand physics whatsoever apparently, and that's the big thing in learning with it. So I just think that's kind of a real interesting concept, and was wondering if you tried that because it's very good for assessment. So.
Yeah, that is on our, like, one of our first things which we are going to try next year, like this coming year. So I'm planning all of that. We are planning assessments, and we are also like trying to see these other problem solving skills, conceptual reasoning, and also attitudinal test. So how do the students themselves feel? Do they feel enthused? Do they feel that this is relevant? So we are kind of trying to get this three-pronged assessment as to what these courses are doing. So that's what I'm doing this summer, basically planning everything.
So thank you, Christine. We also have a question in the Q&A. You indicated that the majority of the feedback from students was positive. What was some of the negative feedback? Our attendee is wondering because they have filled their classroom and have experienced pushback from students.
Yeah. So my main negative feedback was when they interacted with the homework system, the homework part of Cogbooks, where they would enter the answer, but it was not up to the correct precision, or their rounding errors threw them off from the tolerance that the system, Cogbook system was, that we had put the, set the tolerance to. That would cause them real frustration. The other frustration was to use this homework system because we have all these neat features. When they first started, they really didn't know how to, do a subscript, do a superscript, do all these symbols. So, or the graphical software, how did we want them to move the arrows, or how to activate all these things. So our main frustration from students, and the most hostile one and loud one, was these technical difficulties, which we are trying to improve the whole time. But the content delivery has been great. So we've not had any complaints. In fact, students love the way the content has been delivered. They love the simulation. Anything that didn't do testing and was not associated with the grade item, and all those have worked really well. But our homework, we get the most frustration from that part. And so we are working on that, and there's really not easy fix for the tolerance. But over time, students actually learn how to use the system. They also learn significant digits, more about that. And as they get more used to it, that frustration goes. So that has been the main setback from students. And I agree with you. Whenever you try something new, every time I've tried something new, I've had pushback. So I just patiently helped everybody and, just kind of went with it. Because what I have noticed is a lot of students who really are okay are also silent. So you sometimes get a skewed picture that everybody hates it because it just sucks. But that's usually a minority population that is very frustrated, and a lot of population is just quietly sitting and enjoying. So if I don't have like my more than half of my class really complaining very loudly, I try to help students on one-on-one basis. But if a situation is affecting or a glitch is affecting the whole class, I kind of help them or get to the root of that problem or reach tech support.
Okay, we have another question, and I'm going to add to this person's question. So Paul is asking if you have noticed impacts on attrition rate. So I'm going to also add to that. How has it impacted the attrition rate and your DFW rate, student outcomes, and the overall learnings with your students?
So the DFW rates, and I just compared it with my own class because then I just had that data. I think they went down from my previous way, like those previous years. They went a little bit down. And I think the reasons being that I integrated everything in one software, and I'm trying to align everything to the software. And that could be a reason. But yes, just for my own class, I've seen that the DFW rates have gone down. I've also seen an increase in enthusiasm in students, a little bit of attitude change. Students that are in the middle, that really want to put in the hard work, are engaged, but need this guidance and framework and structure. They have kind of found that structure in these courses, and they are able to succeed. Now, there also is a group of students that doesn't seem to have been benefited at all. And I don't know why. Are they not engaging with the class? Are they just, not trying? I don't know. But there is this bottom section, which is still there. And so, but in the middle section, the students who are putting in effort, they are finding the support, they're able to succeed.
Okay, so we've got just a few more minutes, and I want to ask, you had mentioned that this project, that you did have some help. You had some instructional design help and things like that, but you didn't have a huge staff. This is something, my understanding is this is something that one or two faculty members who get together and want to work on it together, or even one person can take a small step in bringing in that adaptive learning, and it doesn't necessarily have to be some big expensive piece of software.
Yeah, so for us, the way I can tell you how many people worked here. So we have an Office of Academic Innovation at PSU. So they gave us two really good dedicated staff to work with us. So they kind of helped us with design and putting the content up in a appropriate fashion, all of that. Then I was also given two students, two to three students over the 3 years I had every term, that helped me with actually developing the simulation, putting the homework, writing well organized solutions because those were not available. So for me, the main job was those homework questions. The most labor intensive, time consuming job was homework questions. But if you just have content, and that's doable by just the instructors. And so it is doable depending on what you want to achieve. Now, different people in my college also did smaller things. Like one of them had written a lot of review for anatomy, physiology, and he just converted that review into a Cogbooks adaptive support framework with small multiple choice questions. So different people have done different things. So they probably have just focused on one aspect and coded that and had that on Cogbooks or adaptive, or like me, I tried to do just the whole thing, and which was, therefore it was a big thing. But compared with bigger publishers, we just worked on the skeletal crew on a very short time scale. So we kind of did it, but I needed that support from OAI, needed the little money for the student helpers. So, and another faculty, so with me working. So, yeah.
And you've been teaching these you've been doing this adaptive for now 3 years, correct?
Yeah. So I've been developing the fall term in the summer, teaching that in the fall, developing the winter term while teaching. So, and then in the winter, we have a quarter system. So in the winter, I would develop the spring and teach the winter. So it has been high stress for me, but also fun, but very high stress. But
fun stress.
Huh?
Fun.
Yeah. Now that it's over, I'm happy. So I'll start with assessments. So that will be the other shocker maybe. But the development took 3 years, very, I think, fast development with the skeletal crew. But yes.
Well, I want to thank Priya for sharing her experience with us and pointing out to us that adaptive learning can really work in terms of helping those students and the student outcomes. It sounds like, you know, like you said, with a skeletal crew, you can do phenomenal things, but even with a small 1 or 2 people working on this, you can really still achieve what's necessary for the adaptive world and adaptive learning, personalizing that experience for your students. So I want to thank not only Dr. Jamkhudkar for giving us her time and sharing her experience with us so that we all can now go out there and investigate and research what it takes to do some adaptive learning and use some adaptive courseware, bring them into our courses. I want to thank our audience for attending today. We do look forward to seeing everyone on July 27th for our next live session, which is titled Teaching with a Cobot, Not a Robot, Using Learning Sciences to Reclaim the Humanity of Adaptive and Active Learning. So I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Once again, Priya, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to the next opportunity. Audience, once again, have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for being here.